Okay, so mobile device management is really important in Exchange because your mobile devices will connect to the Exchange servers and retrieve mail. And if those devices falls in the wrong hands because they are mobile, then people will get access to emails and they might just send emails and so on. So that could be a bad thing. So Exchange provides a lot of mobile device management features. And this module is dedicated to mobility in Exchange Server 2016. Welcome back. So before we go into managing those devices, let's talk about how those devices connect to the Exchange servers. They use a protocol called ActiveSync. ActiveSync is the way that the device will connect to the Exchange server, or client access services, and then retrieve the mail to get onto the device. It's a very cool protocol because it can cache information on that device so that you can read mails while you're in an airplane, you don't have connectivity, or you're up in a mountain, you want to check what you need to do, but you don't have connectivity. So ActiveSync allows you to do that. And then after we've looked at how ActiveSync works, we'll go into mobile device management specifically. So ActiveSync is the protocol that was introduced in Exchange 2003.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago.
Mobile management, was it, no, what was it called?
It was called...
It was a separate SKU, wasn't it?
Exchange 2000 came out, and then we released a product called Mobile Information Server.
MIS, that's right.
Yeah. And then in Exchange 2003, it became part of Exchange.
Yes.
So you no longer had to install the separate server to allow mobile devices to connect. And so this protocol has evolved over the years and got better with all the different features that was enabled in Exchange. And one of the cool features that was enabled was direct push. Back in the day, there was other devices that allowed you to, when the moment you got the email message, your device immediately told you you have a new message. And so this was a neat feature for people. And so Microsoft also, in one of the updates to ActiveSync, provided the ability to give you an immediate status notification that your device has new email.
You've got mail.
Yeah, you've got mail. So Exchange ActiveSync is now part of many device stacks. So it became almost like a standard for mobile devices out there in the world. Many mobile device manufacturers, iOS, Android, they built in ActiveSync into the operating system because most people want to get their mail. So ActiveSync is now built into those devices automatically.
And it's really up to the device manufacturers on how they implement that protocol, right?
Yeah.
Which really ultimately decides what features are available to you as a mobile device user.
So, so the way that works is if a device manufacturer wants to implement a feature on the phone, they will come to Microsoft and say, I want to implement ActiveSync on my device. And then Microsoft would say, cool, here's the spec. And they would drop down the spec and say, if you want to do ActiveSync, you have to implement this pile of things in the device. And they would say, wow, that's too much. I'll do a bit. I'll do some of them. You know, not everybody wants to do all these other funky things. And so they decide which features they're going to implement themselves. So this is why you sometimes see some devices supports some of the features and some devices do not support those features. And so this is not really Microsoft's fault. It's the device manufacturer that decided, I want to concentrate just on a few features or not all of the features. And therefore you sometimes want to also manage which devices can connect to your Exchange servers, because you know, for example, some devices do not support all of these features. And this is really not a problem anymore because most of the mobile device manufacturers is caught up to all the features.
They're pretty much on the same parity that Windows Phone is.
But, you know, in the old days, they only had a subset of features, and so you would say, oh, if I open up my Exchange server to some devices and they don't apply a security policy on that device or do encryption or something like that, then I'm going to make myself vulnerable. So I may want to exclude those devices from connecting to Exchange server. So that's where you get some features that you may want to insist on that device supports before you're going to allow it to connect. You also have Outlook on some mobile devices. So you have Outlook for iOS and Outlook for Android. And those is like an app that you install on those devices, and it allows you to connect to, and that uses ActiveSync in the background to get the mail anyway, but it's not using the features of the operating system, it's using that app's feature. So it's a different way of doing the same thing. And then direct push allows you to get the mail immediately on the device. So the way this works is your device uses ActiveSync to connect and synchronize the data on the server. So it uses HTTPS, so it's secure, using SSL certificates. The newer devices uses AutoDiscover, something with an A, to configure the settings on the device. So what's the features that's available and so on. So all of that is...
we mentioned this earlier that most of your mobile devices now support AutoDiscover. There was a time when I think Windows Phone was the only phone that supported AutoDiscover. I think it was Windows Phone 6.1, if I recall. I'm probably dating myself, but now, you know, Androids, your iOS devices, they all understand AutoDiscover. But the way it works is you have a virtual directory on your Exchange server called Microsoft-server-ActiveSync. Did I get that right? Microsoft?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And so a client, a mobile device from outside, comes in through the entry point to that and connects to that virtual directory using HTTPS. And that's the way the connection is made in a nutshell.
Okay. And then that person that's using that device can set up what features they want. For example, I want to only sync these folders. I don't want to sync everything.
You have the options to sync like your email, calendar, contacts, tasks, and for how many days back you want to sync that information.
Yeah, so maybe you are a person that keeps all your email in your inbox, so you have thousands and thousands of email messages in your inbox, but you don't want all of that on your device. So you would say, I want to only sync things from the last 3 days or from the last 3 weeks.
7 days. 7 days. To 3 weeks?
Yeah, so you can then decide how much you want to sync to your device, so that's available when you're offline. Some of the features that are supported in ActiveSync, and these is also a living list of things that changes over time.
Living, breathing list.
Yes. So in the past, we didn't support HTML format messages, so everything was plain text. You know, when you watched or viewed your message on your phone, it was just a simple plain text message, and you can get the gist of what somebody was telling you because it was really a small screen. But now it's full support for HTML format messages with pictures and all of that. We also support group conversations, the ability to synchronize or not synchronize a conversation, fast email message retrieval. So that's the ability to say, oh, the part of this conversation, only this section is changed on a subsequent message. So it's only going to pull down that delta, that change. So it's a fast message retrieval. It supports Exchange search, so if I want to find messages that is not synced on my mailbox, I can issue a search command via ActiveSync, and it will then find, the server will find that message for me and present it to me.
Similar to the GalSync.
Yep.
That sounds a lot where you can choose search from contacts or search from directory.
Yeah, so you find people in your Gal as well. AutoDiscover, as we said, wasn't previously supported, but that support came later. Direct push, so that's the ability to receive the mail, will get notification immediately when you receive a mail. support for availability information if you want to book a meeting inside of your ActiveSync client so that you can see who's available and who's not. Also, the photos, if you publish your global address list with photos of your users, then they will be able to see the photo of that user. And finally, information rights management. So if the messages are protected, they cannot do reply all, send all, or do copy paste and so on, then your device needs to support that, obviously, but all of that functionality is available via ActiveSync. In terms of direct push is that ability to send, to know immediately when you get a message. I remember the first time I saw direct push in action, I was amazed because my phone would get a notification before the message even appeared in Outlook. It was that quick. And
I still have that experience at home.
Yeah.
I'll receive an email on my device before I see it in Outlook.
So it's really slim and the way it works. And the way it works is your device makes a connection to the Exchange server, and then it leaves that connection open, and the Exchange server can then just reply back if you receive a message on that connection to say, hey, you've received a new message, and then the device will go ahead and retrieve that message.
Well, isn't there a periodic ping also? Like,
Yep.
you know, hey, I'm out here, do you have anything for me? No, not yet, I'll let you know when I do.
Yeah, so it does that. So it connects to the Exchange server, and depending on settings that you set on your firewalls, it may need to do that more often.
Right.
But it leaves that connection open, and the Exchange server can then just reply on that connection. And if the default setting on your firewall is 5 minutes, then your client needs to reconnect every 5 minutes, which can impact the battery life on your
Sure.
device. So if it needs to re-establish that connection every 5 minutes. But if you configure your firewall to allow connections to live for 30 minutes, then the device will have to just reconnect every 30 minutes in order to open up that connection and keep that connection open so that the Exchange server can reply back.
And I think
notify.
Microsoft's recommendation is 30 minutes,
Yes.
isn't it? Yep.
So 30 minutes is a good connection. Obviously, the longer you make it, then you might run out of ports and so on, because the Exchange servers and the firewalls and so on needs to reserve resources to sort of dedicate connections and allow that connections as a known connection. So if your timeout values is not configured to 30 minutes, then we recommend that you do set it to 30 minutes. Sometimes it's less, and some people are really anal about security, and so they want to make sure that they don't allow long-living connections. And so if we stop that, then you, like I said, going to have an impact on your battery life of your devices.
Okay.
So that brings us to mobile device management. Now we know how ActiveSync works, and let's go into the way that you manage those devices. So there's certain things that you can do once you've have a device connected to the Exchange server. The one thing that you can do is you can do a remote wipe. A remote wipe is the ability to wipe the device. So if you lose your device, and in some countries, the example is you're on a taxi and you forgot your phone and it's now gone, and you don't want that phone to get into the wrong hands, then you can remote wipe that device so that there's no more information on that device. Other countries, the example is if your phone is stolen. So depending on, your phone is no longer with you, you want to just get rid of the information on that phone, you would issue a remote wipe command, and you can do this in two ways. You can ask your administrator to do this, or if the administrator allows the users can go into Outlook on the web and issue a remote wipe connection directly to the phone, and then the phone will wipe itself. But you must remember that the phone must have a connection to the Exchange server to know that a remote wipe command was issued. If the client doesn't have that connection, say it's disconnected, or the SIM was removed, or it can't connect to a Wi-Fi connection, then it will not be able to remote wipe itself. Another option that you have is you want to maybe say, I want to allow certain devices, block other devices, or quarantine devices, or ABQ devices before I'm going to allow them to just sync mail. This comes down to that era where you weren't really sure if a device supported all the ActiveSync security settings that you want to deploy to those devices. So you set up rules to say, certain devices, I know those devices, they support all the features that I need, so I'm going to allow them. Other devices, like for example, a really old device that's not secure, I'm going to block those devices. They will not be able to sync. So even if you have a username and you have a password and you're allowed to run ActiveSync, because it's an old device, I'm not going to allow you to sync. And then sometimes you are in that state where you don't know. You first want to check the device out, see that it's nice and so on, and maybe you want to see if that's a device you want to buy yourself. So you want to implement a policy in your organization where everybody needs to show their device to you first. Then you can quarantine the device before you allow it to come in. And then you can also set up options on the mobile device management, like for example, whether or not the device needs to have a password on it, and what type of password. Is it an alphanumeric password, or is it just a numeric PIN or something like that? Or do you want the device to disable its camera? Because maybe you're in this top secret plant and you don't want people to take pictures of how the manufacturing process works. So anybody that's associated with this organization, their cameras on their phones doesn't work. So you can set up settings like that to disable features on the phone. Let's look at some of the ways that you can do these things in mobile device management inside of the Exchange Admin Center. So let me log on. So to do mobile device management, you can go to the Exchange Admin Center. I'm logged on as the administrator here, so I can quickly go into mobile devices, and it gives me two options. So the one option is mobile device access, where I set up my ABQ rules, allow, block, quarantine, and then mobile device policy. So those are the security settings that I want to set on devices. So with ABQ, the Exchange access settings, I can edit this to say, what is my default usage? I'm going to quarantine devices, or I'm going to allow access to devices by default, or I'm going to block all devices, and then I have to go and explicitly unblock devices or give access to users. I can then also, when I quarantine devices, I can set up an email message to say I need to modify. So when somebody connects, I want to notify somebody that a device is quarantined so that they can reach out to this user and tell him to bring the device, and I want to first see that it's compliant before I'm going to allow it. And then I can also add some text here to say whenever a device is quarantined or blocked, that this will be shown to the user. So when the user receives, syncs that device for the first time, they will get a nice message to say, you know, sorry, your device was quarantined, you know, bring it to building 5, office so-and-so, we'll look at this device and see if it's compliant, and then we will allow this device to connect or not. So if you're in this quarantine site, all of the devices that you have quarantined will show up in this list. So I've already quarantined this user's, he used the Windows Mail client, which uses ActiveSync. To and I've quarantined this client. So when he connects to his mailbox, he will see that your device is quarantined. And I can now go and allow this specifically and say, okay, now I've looked at his device. It's a new computer. It's fine. It does support all the features that I want. And then he will be able to retrieve his email. I can also block this to say, no, this device I don't trust. I'm going to block it forever. And then you can also add other devices and create rules for similar devices. So that is possible. Here you can set up device access rules as well. So you can block certain devices automatically or allow certain devices as well. And here you can say specify specific device families. So this gives you a list of all the devices that you already have in your organization. So you can say, oh, I want to block a certain device family type, and then all of them will be blocked. And then you can go down to specific models. So this would be a version. Maybe you want to block anything or devices that are really old that doesn't support the features. And then you decide how to deal with them as well. So that is how the device management takes place. Once you've done that, you also want to set up your mobile device mailbox policies. The mobile device policies allows you to set up the security settings of those mobile devices so that you can ensure that while people are connected to the Exchange system, that the devices are secure. In here, we have settings like we can set up the password policy. So when you sync with your device, you need to require a password, and you need to set up how long the password is and so on. So those are the security settings that you can set up for those devices. There's much more that you can also do inside of the Exchange management shell. Like, for example, you want to only allow devices that support encryption if that is a requirement. So, and you can set up these device policies again and assign them to specific users. So maybe the CEO is a really important user. You don't want him to remember a long password, so you're going to give him a relaxed policy because he's got bodyguards and so on.
And he's cranky.
Yeah, and so nobody is going to mess with him, so you're going to give him a relaxed policy. But for the other users, you're going to give them more a stricter policy. So that is how you manage devices in Exchange Server 2016. So Exchange Server 2016 allows you to do a lot of management of devices. You can say which devices are allowed to connect, which devices are not allowed to connect, which devices you're going to quarantine first, inspect, make sure that they are good. And then once the devices are connected, how you're going to manage the security through policies and say, I want to enable certain features like password. Every time you want to use a phone, you need to enter a PIN so that you will be able to ensure that devices don't get into the wrong hands. So that wraps up our session on mobile device management.